So let me tee this up and frame it up. I'm Scott Groves, Movement Mortgage Consolidated Coaching. We're broadcasting this live and probably broadcasting it a lot of different places because I want as many people to be exposed to Joey's message as possible. So Joey, just to let you know who our audience is, we're going to be rebroadcasting this in a couple of private Facebook groups that have about 10,000 realtors, loan officers, whatnot. And then my coaching clients, the 20 or so that are on right now live, they get the benefit of asking you some real live questions. So let me tell you who the world famous Joey Coleman is. And I'll let you know first by just, who he's worked with, right? Deloitte & Touche, Hyatt Hotels, Zappos, NASA, consulted for them all. He is the author of one of my all-time favorite business books, which is Never Lose a Customer Again. And I have a rule where I don't start reading a new business book until it's been basically introduced to me by 2 or 3 people I trust. And by the time John Vroman, Hal Elrod, Chandler Bolt, a bunch of people I know in the service industry, by the time all of them told me, like, hey, if you really want to set up a great customer experience, you have to 100% live by what Joey has written in this book. I was like, all right, well, I guess it's time to read the book. So after I read the book, I listened to it on Audible, and now I'm rereading it again. I contacted Joey and I said, hey, if I buy a copy of this book for every one of my coaching clients, which we did, all the boxes are back there. Thank you. Would you mind coming on and like sharing some value with our team? So that was kind of how we met. And that was my brief Reader's Digest introduction to you. What do other people need to know about you, Joey, who are being exposed to you for the first time here, either in our coaching group or on Facebook?
Oh, Scott, well, first of all, thanks so much for reaching out, for getting copies of the book for your clients, for inviting me to be part of this conversation today. Super excited to connect. Basically, I've spent the last 20 years teaching companies how to keep their customers. I think most companies spend a lot of time, effort, and money figuring out how to get customers, how to acquire clients, and they spend very little time, money, or effort thinking about how do we retain them? How do we keep those people that have already raised their hand and said, I want to be in a relationship with you? What are we doing to let them know that we value and we appreciate the relationship as much as we claim to? And so what I've done over the last 20 years is work with companies, small, medium, and large. You were kind enough to mention some of the bigger names that folks have heard of, but I've also worked with solo entrepreneurs and businesses, with 2 or 3 employees, because this stuff applies if you have human beings as customers. Now, if you don't have human beings as customers, I'd like to have a separate conversation because I haven't come across that business yet. Even the folks who are in B2B who are saying, Joey, you don't understand, or B2G, business to government, at the end of the day, it's all H to H. It's human to human. And the principles that I outline in the book and the principles that I teach my clients are based on how all human beings operate. How do we create rapport? How do we create connection? How do we build long-term relationships that feel deeper than the transactional interaction that kind of marks most business interactions we have in 2020.
I love that so much because any loan officer or realtor that's watching this, they can relate, right? During the recruiting stage, it's like you're getting phone calls from the CEO, you're being taken out to $500 steak dinners, the world is your oyster. And then when you come on board, it's like, well, I'd like to get a Chipotle meal reimbursed that I had with the realtor. That $22, I don't know if there's any margin in the budget for that, that Chipotle, you got double meat. It was a $22 Chipotle bowl. Like we've all had that experience, right? So why do you think that is? I know there's some human psychology about it, but maybe we can dive into this first. Why is it that companies and people and human beings, they put so much more effort into the recruiting stage, to the courting stage, to the dating stage? If my wife was here, she would tell you all the wonderful things I did for her when we were dating. And Now that we're married, I'm just like, did you stop by the grocery store on the way home? Like, why is that as humans? Like, we put so much more effort into the upfront relationship building. And then once we got them, we don't do a great job. What is that all about to begin with?
Yeah, well, the challenge, Scott, is, and you're absolutely right, there are a bunch of factors here at play that are all compound to make this situation even worse, right? So there's biological components, there's financial components, there's environmental, organizational components. Let's give a quick overview. So biologically, as human beings, as humans, we are more interested in the chase than the catch, okay? That has existed since humans came out of the cave, right? We were predisposed to be hunters before we were gatherers. We were predisposed to chase down what we needed to eat and go find a new place to sleep tonight before we actually built shelter and built farms and started to tend things over time. So we're fighting tens of thousands of years of evolution as humans, if not a millennia of evolution as humans, to get away from this. So there's the biological imperative. And we see this in dating, as you alluded to, right? We also see that most people are much more excited to be dated than to marry. And we see it in an increase in the proliferation of divorces, right? Because why? We don't continue to invest in the relationship the way we did in the beginning. Let's look at the structural reasons. Most CEOs, most business owners came up through marketing and sales, not through retention. You look at the Fortune 500, it's about 70%, okay, came up through marketing and sales. So of course, the lens by which they view the world is more. Let's acquire more, let's get more. Most businesses are structured that the highest paid people in the company are the salespeople and the marketers who get more. The lowest paid people in the company, in the typical company, are the people that are the account managers who manage the relationships with the existing clients. As a general rule, businesses are structured to say, we'll give you the best possible deal when you're brand new as a customer. Oh, you've been with us for 10 years? Well, we've been stepping up your fees every year for the last 10 years. Why not make the new customers pay the most and make the old customers pay the least? It seems counterintuitive, but it's what all of us wish would happen. I don't know about you. I never get excited about a price increase for anything, ever. How much more loyal would I be if they said, you know, you've been a valuable customer for 5 years. In year 6, we're going to knock 5% off, which, by the way, I'm easier to manage in year 6 because you've already figured out if I'm worth it. You've already recouped the marketing expenses. You've already figured out all the ways. Every dollar you make from me later is more profitable than the dollar you make from me in the beginning. Last but not least, so we've got the biological problems, we've got the structural problems, we've got all of this going on. It's also the environment of business today. If you were to go on Amazon right now and you were to search under the word sales in the category of books, and you were to write down how many hits you got, and then you were to erase that and you were to search under the category of marketing and write down how many books you got and add those two numbers together, you would get about 1.2 million books that have been written on sales and marketing. Now, if we were to clear those results and you were to search for customer experience, customer service, customer success, account management, customer loyalty, customer retention, all the phrases that your mind could come up with that would describe what happens after the sale, and you were to search all those phrases and add up all those numbers, even though some of those numbers would duplicate, right? A book would be listed under both search phrases, you'd barely get 30,000 books.
30,000 versus 1.2 million.
Correct. So for those of you that were told there would be no math on this webinar, let me explain that to you. Basically what that means is for every 45 books that are written on how to get a customer, one book is written on how to keep a customer. So this stuff, folks, don't feel guilty. If you're thinking about your own business and you're going, oh my gosh, Joey, you're right. I haven't taken care of the people who have been my customers. Don't feel bad. You're like every other human. Hopefully right. At the end of our conversation, you'll think a little differently. Last thing I'll say, because you can tell I have some strong opinions about this, let's talk real estate specifically, okay? And so this comes in whether you're coming as a realtor or as a mortgage broker. If you're involved in residential real estate, the National Association of Realtors every year does a study. And in their study, they go and they interview people who have purchased homes. And they say, what did you think of your experience with your realtor? And they interview them 30 days after the house is purchased and the folks have moved in. On average, across the last decade, 86% of people said they had a great experience with their realtors. So clap it up, realtors. All right, 86% of you are doing a good job. And I know, knowing you, Scott, those are the 86% that are listening to this, right? So good job for you. They then keep in touch with those people when it comes time to buy their next home. Anyone want to take a guess as to what percentage of homeowners use the same real estate agent they used when they bought their last home?
Oh, I just know from the experience of losing clients, it's got to be under 50%, right?
You think, given that it was 86% said it was great, it would be a high number. What's fascinating is in the chat, we have all kinds of numbers coming in, 50%, 15%, close, 11%.
11% of people
11% use the same realtor the second time.
And it's
by the way, and when you go to the third time, it's even smaller.
It's probably worse for lenders because
it is.
At least the realtor gets to do the fun part of getting them into a house. I put them in debt for 30 years.
Exactly. And here's the problem. And most of the lenders don't have nearly as much face time with the buyer as the real estate agent is. You're right. They don't get the emotional lift of, here's the keys to your new house. It's more like, here's 78 pages of signatures I need from you so that you'll be in debt until you die.
Yeah, not a great experience.
So again, depending on the business you're in and what you're selling, these numbers are absolutely devastating. What we find is that the majority of opinions that people have about doing business with you are formulated in the first 100 days of the relationship. The first 100 days is the most important time of the entire relationship. And all the research shows if you get those first 100 days right, you can have a customer for life.
So I think this is why your book resonated with me so much, because instead of some intangible, hippy dippy guru bullshit, it was really a prescriptive plan of this is what you do in the first 100 days. Because I find as a loan officer, and I think realtors find the same thing, we kind of have people that are on two outliers, right? So like the mean or the median, whatever the correct math term is, I barely made it out of high school, is like it takes 65 days for somebody to buy a house. But really what ends up happening is either they meet us on Thursday, they're pre-approved on Friday, and they're under contract on Sunday. So that first 100 days is like meeting them, doing the loan, closing the loan, and them getting their first mortgage statement. Or it takes them 7 months to find their dream home. So that first 100 days is like, we got pre-approved. Now I have to stay in relationship with them so that when they do buy a house in 7 months, they still come back to me. So whether it's somebody who buys quick or whether it's somebody who like has to have a mid-century modern in the Los Feliz Hills at under 2 million, you still have to have that really deep relationship, because if not, 6 months later, they forget about you. And I think that's why your book just spoke to me so much, because of that prescriptive medicine for that first 100 days. And I want to get into what that first 100 days, encapsulates in what you do. But I want to tell you a little bit, and we talked about this briefly on our call. As a loan officer, and I think as a realtor, I have two competing thoughts in my brain. And we talked a little bit about this, but maybe I can just share some of my own insecurities. Is that what one half of my brain is like, this stuff matters, right? Setting up a great client experience. Clients want a consultative approach. Realtors want a partner. Clients and realtors want a loan officer who's an advocate to, help get their deal accepted and is going to be there long term and is going to tip them off when it's time to refinance. I believe, and I want to believe, because it's good for my business, that relationship still matters, right?
Sure.
That's one side of my brain. But the devil on the shoulder is telling me, hey, Scott, you're living in a fantasy world where the mortgage business or the real estate business is basically the airline business in the 1970s, where, Pan Am Airlines had better food, and they tried to hire better looking, staffing, and they had bigger seats, and they had a better track record of leaving on time. But over the last 30 years, consumers have basically voted with their wallet and said, I don't care if the plane leaves on time. I don't care if it's cattle call. I don't care if my knees are on my seat. I just want to get from Los Angeles to Seattle for $99. I go on kayak. I pick the lowest price option. And Scott, I don't really give a shit about your information or your value or your customer experience. Just give me the lowest cost, because you dummies have talked about nothing but commodity and price and interest rates. And I'm just worried. I'm like, wow, is 80% of the loan officer base or the realtor base chasing that 20% of clients that still care about service? Or am I thinking about this backwards? Like, my head's just spinning in these two different directions. That like, yes, this stuff matters. I want to create a great client journey. Or no, I should just say screw it and be the low cost leader and don't care if I ever deliver great customer service. Like, these are the competing thoughts in my head, right, as a loan officer, as a human, as a coach. Like, what am I getting wrong? Please act as my psychologist.
Scott, here's the thing. You're not getting anything wrong. You're a human being, and you're having natural thoughts in the same way your customers are having natural thoughts, right? This is just the human experience. But let's break it down a little bit. Is anybody on the call want to be thought of as a commodity? Anyone? Anyone feeling excited about being thought of as a commodity? No. So then why behave like a commodity? So first, let's talk about what kind of business do you want to be in? Now, sometimes people will say, well, I don't want to be thought of as a commodity because I want to make more money. It's the wrong way to approach this, okay? I think you should not want to be thought of as a commodity because a commodity implies a transaction, not a relationship. And I don't know about you, it's a lot harder to build a business on transactions than it is to build a business on relationships. So the first thing we have to do is get clear in our own minds that we're not a commodity. So stop leading with what our rate is. Stop leading with the terms. Stop leading with the things that allow them very easily to compare up to others. Now, let me be clear. That doesn't mean you hide those things. It doesn't mean you're not willing to bring those up in the very first conversation. You should. But you need to talk about how you're different. I fly a lot, or pre-COVID-19 when we're recording this, I flew a ton, okay? For context, I flew 160,000 miles on Delta last year. I'm based in Colorado. As you may know, United Airlines has a major hub here in Denver. It would be much more convenient, much easier, and cheaper for me to fly United than it is to fly Delta. Additionally, there's an airline here called Spirit that is even cheaper than United. I have zero interest in flying any other airline other than Delta. Why? Because I do so much of it. Because I want consistency, because I want a great experience, and I'm willing to pay for that. Now, if I was flying once every 5 years, and I was taking my whole family to go on vacation, and we were doing it once every 5 years, yeah, I might fly on Spirit and have a miserable experience and later complain about it. Or maybe I'd have a great experience because I saved a lot of money. Again, it depends on what your mindset is. For everybody listening, my gut instinct is you want the customers who are going to come back to you again and again. You want the investor who's buying 3 or 4 properties a month to always do their mortgages through you. You don't want the, hey, I got one and I'm never going to do anything again in 30 years. You want the people that are doing a higher amount of volume, and you get the higher amount of volume by not being a commodity, but by being a relationship. Last thing I'll say on this is when you create a relationship type environment, an experience type environment, there is a much higher likelihood of a referral. Now, I don't know about you. I've yet to meet a business owner, and if anybody listening falls into this category, chime in on the chat and tell me, Joey, I'm all good. I've got enough referrals. I don't want any more. I would turn down new referrals coming my way. No one ever does that. No one in the history of every business, every industry has ever said, nope, I'm good. No more, please. We all want more referrals. Who do we refer? We refer experiences, not commodities. I don't necessarily sit around and talk with people about what the best brand of spaghetti to buy is. Why? Because in my world, I'm not saying this is right, but just as a consumer personally, spaghetti is a commodity for me. I don't really tell the difference if I'm making spaghetti at home between one or the other. But you know what I will refer? An absolutely incredible Italian restaurant where they serve me spaghetti that may even be the exact same spaghetti I bought at the store, but they deliver an experience, not a transaction, not a commodity. So I think what allows us to be remarkable, that is worthy of people making a remark about us, worthy of people talking about us, is the experience we create for people. I think every real estate agent is probably leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars of deals, if not millions of dollars of deals, on the table every year by not getting more referrals. I think mortgage loan officers, it's even greater, right? Because rarely, and I say this respectfully to everybody listening, I've rarely found myself at a cocktail party where somebody has said, let me tell you about my loan officer. This guy's amazing. Oh, it's incredible. No, it's been positioned as a commodity, so I treat it as a commodity. But I will rave about providers who create an experience. You know, oh, this chiropractor was absolutely amazing. Or, oh, the person who cuts my hair does an incredible job. Oh, this massage therapist I went to. Oh, this Uber driver I had. Oh my gosh, I got their personal business card so that I can call them and we can go outside of the Uber app because it was such a remarkable experience. We're entering an unprecedented era economically. Okay, we're recording this at the end of April of 2020 at a time where most people's businesses are in a state of complete crisis. Unemployment is at an all-time high. Most businesses don't know where the next dollars are coming from. The economy has fallen off a cliff, and it's done it in about 45 days, maybe less depending on your industry. Going forward, people are going to be much more conscious with the dollars they spend than they were just 3 months ago. Yes, some of the dollars they spend will be spent in a commoditized way. How can I stretch this dollar as far as I can? But in every recession, in every depression, every consumer has had something that they deem as a luxury, something that they've been willing to pay a little bit more for because of the experience they got. If I'm you, I want to be that offering in the marketplace. The offering in the marketplace that people says, oh, wait a second, what can we do? You know, when somebody just said in the chat, you know, it reminds me our customer is really the realtor. Here's the thing. Everybody has multiple customers. It's actually both. You have the customer in the realtor and in the homeowner, because here's the problem. See earlier statistic about 86% feeling happy, but only 11% reusing. If you focus only on the realtor, those people are only going to go back through the realtor. You're only getting 11% on the second house.
Right.
I want you to get the 89% that go to a different realtor, but who walk into the realtor saying, hey, you may have somebody you recommend. Don't worry. I got my loan officer teed up. We're good to go. And so we can get creative about thinking as loan officers, what can we do to maintain a relationship beyond the sale? What can we do to still be in contact with that customer after they've moved into the house? Because for most of you, and I say this respectfully, once the ink is dry on the paperwork, you're on to the next one.
Right, right.
There's no relationship with the customer. There's no relationship with the realtor. It's literally churn and burn. Let's move to the next one, right? So what can we do to change the conversation? You know, somebody chimes in the chat and they say, well, the consumer has been conditioned to shop the rate. Maybe. And we can look at that. And I'm not saying that the person who typed this in the chat believes what I'm about to state, but there are some people who look at that and go, well, there's nothing I can do about it. And it's just a commodity. There's nothing I can do. Let's talk shoes, okay? Shoes, as a general rule, are a strip of leather with other leather around it with a bow on top that ties it together. I can go to some places and buy a pair of shoes for $15. I can go to other places and buy a pair of shoes for $500. I can go to other places and buy a pair of shoes for $10,000. They're all still shoes. But how do I feel when I put them on? How do I feel when I'm walking down the street? What is the craftsmanship? What is the experience? What is the reputation? What is the look? What is the feel? Most loan officers historically, not folks listening on this call, but historically have decided to focus on what's my rate. And when you get into conversation, you promote it on your website. Lowest rates, best deals. Okay, great. You are now the Walmart of loan officers. That's fine if that's your business model, but you better get ready to stack a ton of business. What's the difference between walking into Walmart and walking into Target? In many ways, it's night and day. Ironically enough, they sell mostly the same stuff, but they have two very different target markets. Target wants to sell you more on an experience. You know when you walk into Target, you're going to pay more than if you walk into Walmart. But you're willing to do it because you'd rather shop at Target than Walmart. Or at least that's what Target customers do, right?
So let me ask you this, because I think this is a really important kind of inflection point in the conversation is, if we do in fact sell a product, as you mentioned, and offer a service that consumers will probably only take advantage of about once every 6 years. Like I know the numbers here in Southern California is the average homeowner stays in their home for 7 years because we have a pretty transient community in Southern California, and they keep their mortgage for about 5 years. You know, people take cash out, interest rates drop, whatever. So I know that when a client is fixated on like, well, Scott, it's $89 a month for 30 years, you know, I have my go-to talking points and trying to explain to them that like, hey, if you have this mortgage for 30 years, I'll eat this book.
Sure.
But how do we explain, you know, going through your 8 steps, assess, admit, affirm, how do we explain to the client of like, hey, what you're getting today is not a one-off transaction that's going to be closed in 30 days. Like my goal for us is to create a financial relationship where we're going to do a mortgage review, or in 5 years when I know you're going to refinance because shit happens, I want to be the person you come back to. In 7 years when you're thinking about buying, I want to be the person you come back to that says, hey Scott, can I even afford to sell and upgrade or downsize or keep both houses? Like, how do we from day one start to set up that relationship where it clicks in the consumer's mind? Like, oh yeah, I'm not shopping for an interest rate today. I'm shopping for a consultant who's going to be here today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, 7 years from now. I think that's the part that loan officers are missing, because we know that, we believe that. Anybody who's been around this industry for 10, 20 years has the track record of like, hey, Joey, where you're sitting right now is not going to be the house that you're living in 7 years. We know this intrinsically and consciously and subconsciously, but we haven't figured out how to express it to the client so that they believe us and they just don't feel like it's a sales pitch.
Love it. 2 thoughts. Number 1, we show them, not tell them. We show them, not tell them. So often we think, oh, well, if I can just get my messaging a little bit differently, or I can convince and explain. I've got 2 kids, 2 boys, a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And every time they come through the kitchen and there's cooking going on, I find myself saying, don't touch the stove. The stove is hot. You and I both have been around the block long enough to know, Scott, that they're actually not going to learn that until they put their hand on and burn the heck out of their hand. Now, as their father, I don't want them to do that. I don't. And I know that their life would be in some ways much better if they didn't scald the heck out of their hand. But I also know that they're not actually going to learn it till they experience it. So what I would do is, instead of telling people that the relationship with us is going to be different, I would show them that the relationship with us is going to be different. So what I've done from a young age with my boys, and this, you know, we're recording this could get me in trouble with Child Protective Services, right? If my kids come up, I'm like, look, that stove is really hot. If you touch it, it's going to hurt. Now you can choose to touch it, but I promise you it's going to hurt. And sure enough, touch the stove. Oh, that really hurt. I'm like, when daddy tells you something's going to happen, it's pretty bad, right? There can be a consequence. Here's how it works. I think as we bring it back to what do the loan officers and what do the real estate agents do, we look at it from a place of view of, does how you're showing up in the interaction with them match the words that you're telling them? So you bring up an excellent point. I know for a fact you're going to refinance. Imagine this. Imagine you and I are meeting for the first time. I'm the loan officer. You're the person buying the house. And you come in and you say, Scott, how you doing today? Or you say to me, Joey, how are you doing today? I say, oh, Scott, I'm actually doing great. You know, forgive me for running 2 or 3 minutes late. I was just wrapping up the refinance of a customer that we've now refinanced their mortgage 4 times across the last 15 years. What? Yeah, see, a lot of people, when they get a mortgage, they actually move before it makes sense to refinance, and we help them manage the move and the share. But some people who stay for a long time, we're with them all along. Not only are we helping them refinance when they say they need to refinance, but as part of our service, we have a program where every 6 months, we send you a little update that tells you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much we think you should consider refinancing. 1 being not at all, because here's what would happen. 10 being like, we need to schedule a call tomorrow. But we let them know where they are in the process, so that as interest rates change, because I don't know about you, I don't want to pay attention to interest rates as a homeowner. I don't want to pay attention to what the newest best deals are. I want to enjoy living in my house. That's why they hire us, because it's our job to watch that. Now, that's a completely different conversation, I would imagine, than most loan officers are having. I think most loan officers are having a conversation of, oh, what other rates have you heard? We've got the best rates in town.
Right.
I bet I can shave a quarter point. First of all, if the word quarter point comes out of your mouth, I want you to slap yourself. Okay? Because the only people on the planet that understand what you mean are other loan officers, bankers, stockbrokers, and math teachers. And I'd be willing to bet that 90% of the people you're talking to don't fall into that category. If you're in that category with someone, yeah, talk shop all day long, go bonkers, eat your heart out. But don't do that with the average person that's coming to you that is like, wait, I was told there would be no math. I was told that I would come in and all I would have to try to figure out. That's why they're fixated on how much is it per month. One big insight into your customers, the reason they care about how much it is per month is because they don't want to do the math past month one. The average consumer doesn't understand that when they buy a $300,000 house, they really pay about $600,000. Because if they thought through that process, they'd vomit. Instead, what they want to think is, how much am I going to have to pay this month? How much am I going to have to do? Okay. And that's why they get in you and they're like, well, wait, this other guy said it's $89 a month and you're saying it's $94 a month. That's why they do that. It's not about the quarter point, the tenth of a point, the half point. It's about how is this going to move the dial this month? And now it's your opportunity to say, here's the deal. Let's talk about what you can afford per month. And let's definitely work with you within that space. But if we're going to talk about how much you can afford this month, we have to have two other conversations. How much could you afford per month 3 years ago? And how much could you afford per month 3 years from now? One of those we know for sure. How much you could afford 3 years ago. Just out of curiosity, Scott, was that more or less than today? Most of your people, it's going to be, well, that was less. I make more money today than I did 3 years ago or 5 years ago. I like to use 2 or 3 years as the example because most people can't think back 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But usually 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it's far enough back that they can remember it, but far enough away that there's been an appreciable change between their monthly income then and their monthly income now. And then you say to them, great, so I understand that you're really concerned about this now. But if we get this deal and we lock you into this house, you've told me that you want to buy a house that you can live in for the next 10 years. But you're trying to buy it with today's dollars. I'm not saying buy it with your dollars 10 years from now, because that gets you upside down and it gets ugly real fast. But what I am saying is if we're talking about the difference between $89 and $94, is that additional $5 break the bank? Probably not. So what can we do to work together? And now we're having a different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, just the scripting of this language, you start talking to people about what they could have afforded 3 years ago, what they can afford 3 years into the future. This is exactly what you said, show them versus telling them. You're creating the environment where you're letting them know that you're going to be there in 2 or 3 years for them.
Exactly.
Part of the process.
And Scott, I love that you found that because did I say, and I'm going to be with you 3 years from now? No, I co-created a vision with you of 3 years from now. And when you thought about yourself 3 years from now, you thought about me at the same table with you. I didn't have to pander to you and say, oh no, I'm going to be with you 3 years from now, because that sounds super salesy and nobody wants to be sold to ever in the history of the world. But people will love having the idea that somebody else is in this with him. Folks, let's be candid. For the majority of human beings, buying their house is not only the largest financial transaction they're ever going to be involved in, at least up until that date, but it's one of the scariest transactions because all they know is the fear of it going wrong. We don't really sit around and tell stories of, hey, remember how my Uncle Bob got that sweet low mortgage back 20 years ago and he's just crushing it on his mortgage payments right now? No. We tell the conversation of, oh my God, did you hear about Jerry, who we went to college with? He's upside down on his house, $300,000. They're foreclosing. They only know the scared stories. They don't know the successful stories. So your job as an advisor, and I use that word specifically because you're advising them on their choices. You're not an order taker. If you were an order taker that it's about the sales numbers. Why don't I just go online and buy my mortgage that way? Click, click, click. And more people are doing that, right?
Right.
If you're going to hold yourself out as, no, you're coming to me to help and advise you and navigate this, now we're having a separate conversation where we're saying, okay, let's talk through how this fits in the whole process. See, respectfully, and I say this knowing that there's some real estate folks on the phone right now, here's the problem. The loan officers are thinking that the real estate agents are having these conversations with the buyer, and the real estate agents are saving these conversations for the loan officer to have with these buyer, which means, guess what? No one's having the conversation with the buyer.
Right.
Because everyone's afraid of the conversation. What if you were the person who wasn't afraid of the conversation? What if you were the person who walked in and said, look, I bet you got a lot of questions. Let me see if I can guess what they are, because I've been doing this for 15 years. I usually know what the top 3 questions are. You tell me if I've got this right. Hang on a second. I'm going to try to see if I can channel this in. Okay. You want to know what the percentage is going to be, and just watch their face. You want to know what the monthly fee is going to be, how much they're going to have to pay for the mortgage per month, and you want to know what the maximum amount you can get approved for is. How many out of the 3 are you thinking right now? Well, my gut instinct is the majority of people who come into your office are going to say all of them. And you say, great. Can I tell you the 2 things in addition to those 3 I'm thinking about? Whoa, wait, there's 2 more? There's 2 more that I didn't know about? And you already know my 3, and by implication of saying that, you're ready to answer my 3? What are the other 2? And you go, hang on a second, hang on. Okay. How long are you going to live in that house? And how sure are you this is your last house? Oh. Now we're into 2 questions that they may or may not have thought about. 2 questions that if I'm a loan officer, I'm very interested in knowing the answers to. We can change the conversation. You have a responsibility as the expert in the conversation to make sure all the things that they should be taking into account are taking into account.
Man, you clearly did your homework, first of all, for this call, and I only gave you about 4 or 5 days of warning. So clearly you did some reading the last few days about loan officers and what we experience. I appreciate that.
Well, here's the thing, Scott, and I appreciate that compliment, but let me be 100% honest and transparent. I didn't. And by the way, I've never purchased a house. I've rented my entire life. I've never personally done business with a loan officer.
You're making people on this call feel like dipshits that have been doing loans for 20
No.
years.
Here's what I know.
Clearly you get something we don't get.
No, here's what I've done. Here's what I've done. I've been a criminal defense lawyer. I've worked in the intelligence community. I've taught at the postgraduate level. I ran a marketing and design studio. I built websites. I've been a professional speaker. I've been in consulting. I've had more jobs than probably all of the people that are your private coaches on here combined. Okay. Now, some may say that's because Joey can't hold a job. I like to think it's because I have an adventurous personality, right? Here's why I know those things. Because I know humans. I've spent my entire life being a student of the human condition. All customers have the things that they tell you are important, and then they have this stack of questions that are really important to them that they're never going to tell you. Why? Because when they've said that in a sales meeting in the past, they've gotten burned on it. It's been used against them. And if you can show them that you've thought of these things and bring them forward into the conversation, it gives them permission to have a conversation that they've wanted to have for years, but have felt uncomfortable having. When you take it from a conversation of percentage points and make it down to how much do you want to write a check for or have auto withdrawn from your bank account every month, it lets them know that you're seeing it from their world. All I ever try to do, and I'm very flattered by the compliment, but I want to be honest, is I try to step into the world of the person I'm having a conversation with and imagine what it must be like to be them. And so what thought I did give leading up to this conversation was thinking about what's it like to be a real estate agent? What's it like to be a loan officer? What's it like to be somebody buying a house? Because as a general rule, those are the 3 people in the triangle that we're talking about here today.
Yeah.
And each of you has your own hopes, your own dreams, your own fears, and each of you is trying your best to get to the final solution, which is the key and someone moving into a new house. But here's the thing. You all have different finish lines historically. The loan officer's finish line is signing on the paper. The real estate person's finish line is handing them the key. The homeowner's finish line, which most people in this industry never think about, is not signing the mortgage. It is not the key. It is not moving into the house. It is sitting in the house 3 to 6 months after they've moved in, when everything's unpacked. They know who some of their neighbors are. They know where the local restaurants are. They know how far the commute is to school. They've driven the routes. They've got the experience. And they're sitting in their house saying, God, I'm so glad we moved into this house. That's their finish line. When you want to serve your customers, it's important to know the difference between your finish line and their finish line. So many businesses put all the emphasis on getting the customer to the business's finish line, instead of thinking about the big space behind that is the customer getting to their finish line. If you take nothing away from our time today other than this, pay attention to the difference between where your finish line is and where their finish line is. Put more emphasis into creating a remarkable experience there, and your referrals will go through the roof. You will be calling me saying, Joey, this is ridiculous. We've had to hire more people because we've got so many referrals. We've taken our marketing budget to zero because we can't fill the funnel any faster because we're already overwhelmed with the number of people singing our praises.
Amazing. Well, I think you can get all of my coaching clients to fire me right now and hire you. So that's a good thing. And, one of the things we didn't get a chance to talk about earlier today, because we were both having some technical difficulties, is maybe, setting up some type of series that we could, of course, pay you for your time to go through these steps. We didn't even really have a chance to dive into the book of the assess, admit, affirm, activate, acclimate, accomplish, adopt, and advocate, which are all steps that we really have to spend some time thinking through, right? I mean, you and I could probably make this an 8-part series and sell it to every loan officer in the country, which maybe we'll talk about that when we're off the call here. But are there any parting thoughts that you want to give to the realtors, the lenders, on how they can think through this? Okay, they're bought in. They believe you now. You've now convinced me again that the client journey, the customer experience, it all matters more than click a button, get a mortgage, pick the lowest rate. This isn't a restaurant menu at a Chinese food place, something from column A, something from column B. You've now reaffirmed my faith in humanity. Thank you. What are some additional tips that you give people, other than buying your book or emailing me if you're in our coaching program to get a free copy? What are some questions people should be asking themselves? What should they be thinking through when they start to now rebuild their client journey?
Yeah, so let's talk about where we're at today when we're recording this. And the reason I want to do that is because I know we're live streaming. I know we've got a bunch of people on the call. And we are at a time right now, thanks to COVID-19, of greater fear, doubt, and uncertainty than at any point in most human beings currently alive today life memory. Okay? So let's talk about how this stuff hits right now. My gut instinct is that there is less business right now than there was a few months ago. Whether you're a real estate agent or a loan officer, your phone probably isn't ringing off the hook. And guess what? It's probably not going to be ringing off the hook for another couple months anyway. Okay? I'm not trying to be a doom and gloom guy. I'm an optimist. I'm a glass half full guy always, but I'm also a realist and a pragmatist who looks at the landscape and says, okay, wait, we've got some big problems here. How you use this time is going to make the difference in the speed in which you get back to where you were and whether you get to go further. What are you doing right now in these 100 days to make the most for your business? What I would encourage everyone to do is to recognize that there is one thing that we know about humans, and that is that humans are emotional beings. And what are the emotions that you can trigger and use to your advantage in your relationships with your customers? How can you give them certainty? How can you give them variety? How can you give them confidence? Think of all the emotional words that you might trigger and look at the journey that your customer goes through with you and say, at each step in the journey, what is the emotion they're currently feeling and what emotion could I make them feel? For example, loan officers, for somebody buying a house for the first time, they come in to meet with you. What do you think their emotional state is? Scott, what do you think? What's their emotional state?
Fear plus excitement.
Fear plus excitement. It's a weird time, right? On one hand, they're about to get a house. On the other hand, they're looking at the price tag going, oh my gosh. And we're about to talk numbers, which is a general rule. Most Americans, for those listening in the US, most Americans don't like to talk numbers. They don't like to pay attention to numbers. Okay? So it's this weird balance of on one part of their body is cheering and the other part is like, oh my gosh, they're going to say things in this meeting that I don't understand. You know, things like an amortization schedule. And I don't even know how to spell it, let alone what it means, right? And they're going to be freaking out. What can we do to say, what are the emotion they're at and what's the emotion we want to go to them? So if they're at fear and uncertainty with a dash of excitement, what I want to do is keep the excitement, but add in a little bit of emotion of confidence. So what can I do? I can slow it down. I can speak to the things that are most important to them. I can illustrate to them how I'm in it for the long haul. You could even say, look, you may have friends or family members that have purchased a house before. And my gut instinct is if you were to ring them up and say, what relationship do you have with your loan officer, your loan broker now? They would say, I don't even remember who it is.
Yep.
And there you may be looking at other people and talking to other people. I don't know who those people are. I don't need to know who those people are. What I will tell you is the people who I help get mortgages, I'm in the relationship for the long haul. Even though, by the way, just so you know, for the math, I get paid once you do the mortgage. I don't get paid for continuing to advise you going forward. So let's just get that on the table really clear, okay? I get paid for what the deal we got you into. My job is to advise you going forward. Why? Because my entire business has been built on the model that if I take great care of you, you'll tell your neighbors, you'll tell your coworkers, you'll tell your children. That's how long I intend to be in this business. Okay? So my goal is to help you make the best possible decision. And it may be me or it may be someone else. But it may be the case that you came into this meeting only thinking what matters is the quarter point. And that's important, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to get you the best percentage rate we can. But there are other things that you should factor in too, like the number of people who are currently paying on a mortgage interest rate that is way above what they could get if they refinanced, but because they don't have a relationship with their mortgage broker, their loan officer, the person who helped them, they have no relationship or means to go back to them, okay? So what can you do as the loan originator to help them continue this relationship going forward? So think from an emotional point of view, how you might be able to connect with them.
That's awesome, man. And then last thought, and we'll leave it from here because I know we're short on time, and I'd love to call you just for 5 minutes when we're done here so I can thank you. But last thought, bringing all these ideas into the fact that, hey, at the end of the day, the client we might only see every 5 or 7 years for a transaction. We're going to try to keep that relationship going. The realtor we might hear from weekly, you know, if they're sending us a lot of referrals. How do we, and Eric asked, how do we think through the same amount of thoughtfulness and stay memorable with that realtor, that attorney, that CPA who maybe referred us business at some point, but we've fallen out of relation? You know, I know that's really the subtext of Eric's questions, right? Like, I used to get referrals from this person. I clearly didn't make them feel special, or we had a great coffee appointment and then I never got that first referral. How do we build on that same relationship with the referral sources? We'll let you give some mic drop there, and then we'll finish our time together.
Sounds good, Scott. So here's the deal. I liken this stuff to dating, okay? If you want to go from dating to significant dating to engagement to marriage to happy long-term marriage, it's a different approach than if you want to just churn and burn and date as many people as possible. So the first question is to ask, what kind of relationships do you want to build? Okay. The second type of question to ask is to say, what is the way that we can build the relationship that is going to work for them? Here's the problem that most loan originators, mortgage brokers have. There's a lot of you chasing a few realtors, okay? And most of the chasing is being done based on math and numbers. And well, I can get you a quarter point over here, a half point here, or whatever it may be.
I can pay for your marketing. I can pitch in for this, whatever.
Right.
It's all financial.
Right. It's all financial. If you want it to only be an all financial transaction, stop and ask yourself, when it comes to a personal relationship, like with a significant other, are you interested in the one who it's about a financial transaction, or are you interested in something different? I'm just saying, what are you looking for? If you're interested in just the financial transaction, that's totally fine. Go do that. But don't complain when it doesn't work out the way you want it. Okay? Think about building the long-term relationship. Think about what they need. How can you help them? What happens when the person that you've continued to be in conversation with over several years about their mortgage is ready to buy a house again? See earlier comment where only 11% of them go back to the real estate agent. What if you could help that real estate agent who has a comeback rate of 11% go to 30% for anybody that ran a mortgage through you? They'd be making tens of thousands of dollars more. Show them that you're ready to do that, right? Show them that you're ready to be part of the bigger conversation. My theory is what we want to do is recognize that there are multiple people that contribute to the success and or failure of our business, some more than others. And we need systems and processes to maintain the relationship. In the same way that in my book, I outline the first 100 days of the customer relationship. You have your first 100 days of the person getting the mortgage with you. You have 100-day relationships with all the real estate agents too. How are you managing those? What is their customer journey? Map out the customer journey on your wall of a person going through the process of getting a mortgage with you, but then also map out the journey of a realtor being with you. Here's what I know about most, folks, loan originators and folks that work in mortgages, okay? And I say this respectfully. They have a tendency to not spend as much time looking out for the needs of the realtor as they could. I'm not going to say as they should, even though I might feel it's an as they should for some, but it's an as they could. If you're maintaining the relationship over time and continuing to get better deals and do refinance, are you feeding those people back into the real estate agent? Are you reminding them who they got? Are you even having a conversation saying, hey, by the way, I know we're refinancing, which probably means you're going to be here another year or two, but it's been a while. Are you still in contact with your real estate agent? Are things good there? Can I be introducing you to someone else? What's going on with your refinance? Is it because you're trying to increase the gap so that when you sell, it's an even better deal for you? Or are you trying to change the structure because you've had a change in your financial circumstances? Or is it because you're buying another house and you want to change the numbers on this one to make the numbers on this one flow better? Let them know that you're thinking of it from their perspective, and then use it as a way for you to do referrals in and out as well. The people that look after their customers have customers that look after them. It's that simple. This isn't rocket science, right? People ask me all the time, they're like, Joey, this is so revolutionary. I know, care about your customers. It's a really novel concept. I totally came up with it, first person ever. No, I didn't come up with it, folks. I'm being facetious, right? This is something we all know that we should do. But very few of us are actually making the investment of time, effort, and money to actually do it. I would love if people took advantage of this time period where there's a lot of uncertainty in the world to get really certain on your process, on your system, on the way you want to treat people, and then execute on it. Because the economy is going to come back. Whether it comes back in a month or 10 years, who knows? Question mark. No one knows the answer to that question. I personally think it's going to be a lot longer than a month, but I think it's going to be a lot shorter than a decade.
Yep.
Okay. What I would love you to use this time, folks who have been kind enough to give us your time and listen in today, is to figure out how can I lay the foundation in a system and a process for caring. See, that's a crazy thing. Most people that will tell you, oh, you got to care about your clients. You got to love your clients. It's all this touchy-feely emotion stuff. And people are like, that's why I became a numbers person, right? I didn't want to have to deal with any of that. The reality is, as humans, that's what we all want. but there's a numbers benefit to it. You can have a system and a process that will lead to more sales at a higher percentage point, more referrals at a higher close rate, if you just take the time to put some system and structure into your business. When times are booming, anybody can make money as a loan officer. I mean, they just can, because like there's enough churn, there's enough things happening in the marketplace. When the market goes soft or the market goes south, the people who continue to move forward are the people who have systems and process, and the people who are about creating personal and emotional connection with their customers, that are leading the charge of not having it be a transactional relationship, are leading the charge of actually going deeper to build longer term relationships, as opposed to the just, woohoo, ring the bell, they signed the mortgage, we closed another one.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Joey, if there's a realtor or a loan officer who's watching this and wants to work with our team here at Movement Mortgage or Consolidated Coaching, you know where to find us. Facebook, shoot me an email, Scott Groves team. Joey, other than picking up a copy of your book on Amazon, because it is a great book, and this is going to be one of my new Bibles that gets tabbed out left and right. Where can people find you online if they want to get you to come do a keynote for their company? Where can they, I know you're not a big Facebook guy, but where can they interact with you if they have business questions or follow-ups after they read the book? Team, read the book.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd love it if they read the book. By the way, there's a guarantee in the book. If you buy the book, and we've got the hardcover, we've got the ebook, we've got the Audible where I narrate the book. So if you've enjoyed my antics, I will read the book to you while you do your workout or whatever you're doing. The best place to connect with me is on my website. It's joeycoleman.com, Joey, like a 5-year-old you probably know somewhere. Coleman, Coleman, like the camping equipment, but no relation. joeycoleman.com. You'll find videos there. Folks, my entire mission is to raise the bar on customer experience on this planet, right? I think it's lying on the ground. I know we can do better. I know you want to do better. And here's the final thing I'll leave you with. When you first got into this business, you were actually better at the experience in some ways than you are today. And the reason you were better is not because you've gotten bad, it's because you've gotten busier, right? It's easy to really care about your client when you have one or two. Well, guess what? You're less busy now, okay? You're going to be less busy now. Now is the time to double down. The people in the real estate world, whether it's an agent, a mortgage broker, a loan officer, whatever title you have, the people in this space, you have more time today than ever. How are you using this time? How are you using this time to build the foundation, to build the systems, to build the processes that will allow you to create deeper rapport and deeper connection with your customer? Because the economy will come back. No one knows when. Anybody who tells you they knows when lies about other things too. No one knows when it will come back. But what I know is the people who are willing to invest now into the systems and the processes and the methodologies for creating remarkable client experiences are the ones who are going to come out of this faster, are going to come out of this stronger, and are going to be able to ride this more long-term and build a sustainable business as opposed to a transactional order-taking process.
Well, Joey, I loved you so much today. I love your book. We'll talk soon, man. And we're going to have a conversation shortly about how do we continue this conversation for our coaching clients, pay you for your time, and a live event or something in the near future. So again, man, I really appreciate you, and let's figure out a way to keep working together for our coaching clients and to help me better my experience for our realtors, because that's what it's all about, right? We got to make this easier and better for our clients.
I love it, Scott. Thanks so much. And thanks to everybody who tuned in either live or on the recording and stayed the whole time. We really appreciate your time. Hopefully you've gotten a nugget or two that you can go apply, and reach out to me if I can be of support. It's joeycoleman.com. We'll see you there.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.